Hello, my name is Robin Hanna. I'm a marketing and digital expert collaborating mostly with fashion businesses. In this video, I'll tell you more about the KPIs you have to carefully follow regarding your online activity as a brand or a retailer. When conducting a communication or marketing operation, it is sometimes difficult to determine whether it has been a failure or a success. The problem is that the notion of goal is often vague, and thus we don't know if we've achieved it or not. However, being able to measure success is essential to determine if you're on the right track or not. Indeed, how can we judge the success of a physical mailing campaign whose sole purpose is to thank its best customers? What indicators could we possibly take to determine if a social media ad is working? Let's dig into these different examples to see how we can determine the right key indicators to measure their success or their failure, which will help us then retrieve vital information from all our operations to improve them step by step. Let's say that you're sending 500 letters to your best customers to thank them for being so loyal. Not emails, but real letters. How could you possibly know if this operation, which was only based on kindness, was a success? Simply by setting a goal beforehand, which you should always do. You can determine an indicator for success or a key performance indicator if you don't know what success looks like. I'm using this example to show you that the goal of an operation doesn't always have to be monetary, although it can be. Here's one possible goal that you could choose for your physical mailing campaign. You want people to respond to your letter by sending you a letter back to see how engaged they are. If so, you track the number of persons that respond to your letter, what we will call response rate. If 50 out of 500 customers respond to your letter, you'll have a response rate of 10%. Is this a good or bad response rate? I can't determine that for you. It depends on what you're used to, what you want to achieve, and how it measures up against industry standards. But now at least, we have something to work with. Let's say now that you went into Facebook and created an ad. Did it work or not? Well, this is a tricky question. First of all, what was the goal of the ad? Maybe it is getting people to my eShop. What indicator should I choose to measure if my ad did successfully complete this goal? Most people would look at the cost per click and define it as a key performance indicator. The CPC shows you how much you spend for each person clicking on your ad. This isn't wrong. But the problem with this indicator is that it doesn't teach you anything. Let's say the CPC is satisfying for your standards. The CPC doesn't tell you if you can improve your ad, thus it's a bad key performance indicator. You need to go back a little. What happens before a person clicks on your ad? She sees the ad and decides whether to click or not. Is there an indicator that can help us measure how many people decide whether to click or not? Yes, in fact there is. It's called CTR, which is short for click-through rate. No matter the CPC, you should always make sure that your CTR is above 1%. Before looking at your CPC, you need to look at your CTR. The first one will tell you if you can afford spending money, but only the second one will tell you how good or how bad your ad is working. Monitoring an e-commerce can be a daunting task, and understanding all the data associated to it is even worse. Time spent on site, bounce rate, conversion rates, number of visits, number of unique visitors. How can we determine what indicators to look at and what indicators to ignore? Simply by determining the goal of your e-commerce website, which is to sell as much as possible to the most people possible. Measuring the number of people is done by looking at the number of unique visitors per month. Measuring the quantity of sales is done by looking at your sales numbers. These are the two indicators most e-commerce owners look at. However, these two indicators can only tell us if you are attaining our goals, but they can't tell us if you can do any better. Let's say that you have a lot of unique visitors per month, but only few buy something off your site. To understand why, you need to look at other indicators. For instance, if you want to know how many people came to your site and actually bought something, you need to look at your average conversion rate, which should be at least around 1% if you're in the fashion industry. You also need to know if people who put something in their cart actually buy it, and this is determined by your cart abandonment rate, which should be under 69%. By comparing them to industry averages, you can determine if you could do any better. For every operation, for every ad, for every piece of content, for every web page you create and post, you need to have a clear goal in mind. Then you need to ask yourself, how can I measure the success of the goal? This question will give you a few indicators. Most people stop here. But then you need to go one step further and ask yourself, which of these indicators will actually tell me how I can improve my results? So, all in all, for each action, you need to define a goal, an indicator that helps you determine if you succeeded, and an indicator which helps you determine how to improve your action.